generation,
I'm
maybe you have a choice.
RadioWatchDog.com, the Republican
I
candidate
did
for
not
governor.
have sexual relations with
I
that
realize that this is something he is
We're not going to be able to solve our problems if we get distracted by sideshows and carnival barkers.
One Republican, one Democrat, and you discuss the issues that matter in today's local, state, national, and global politics. Hosted by Steve Hickson with co-hosts John Stanberry and Franklin Chansey. This is Backfire.
Good morning, Cleveland. Welcome to another edition of Backfire, right here with Steve Hickson and John Stanberry. Franklin Chansey's not going to be here this morning. But anyway, we're on the phone. John was talking to someone. We was trying to get somebody else in down here, and all of a sudden we're live on the air. Chief Engineer Daniel Brantley made us come alive.
Daniel's still in, Franklin. He always plays devil's advocate pretty good.
That's right.
He
Daniel,
doesn't believe any of it.
John!
He doesn't believe any of it, but he pitches it out there pretty good.
Oh, I tell you, last night was a rough night for Polk County, I understand. We had storm warnings around here, but I understand Polk County got hit by some tornadoes, and I don't know exactly how bad it is, but I've heard rumors of some things. So anyway, if you know of anything about some Polk County things, let us know right here at Woot, and we'll pass them along.
And apparently Gatlinburg and Sevierville is still burning.
Yeah, I know. I'm hoping this rain, my goodness, I hope that as hard as the rain was that the fires were finally put out around here. Gatlinburg, they really had a tough time.
Tough.
Yeah. Art Vista Hotel, I used to go there once a year for a meeting up there, and I heard that place was burning, or at least the outside of it was.
Isn't it mostly concrete?
Yeah, it's a round brick building or something, but I heard that it was on fire, or some of it was anyway. Anyway, what do you think about some of the things going on this week in the political news? What about the recount, John?
Well, I mean, my opinion, it's a fundraising scam on Jill Stein's part.
I'm hearing it from another angle.
What's that?
I'm hearing that if they can stall the electoral vote from being announced, that it'll be left up to Congress to make the decision.
Yeah, I mean, they're talking about that. There's a couple of problems with some of them. If they force these recounts, there's a deadline for the state to certify their election and their votes. And if they miss that deadline, they don't actually get to be in the Electoral College. Now, part of the problem is this is uncharted water. And, you know, we've talked about this before. I said that I worked when I was a teenager in the Senate. The Senate works sort of on the idea of gentlemen's rules, and when people cease to be gentlemen, the rules cease to work. And this is sort of the same situation. The founders, when they established this system, they kind of expected everybody to be decent and honorable about it. And what they're doing is they're manipulating the fact that we've never had someone push things like this.
Well, what do you think? I mean, Lion Hillary's even behind it. She's going to probably say she's not, but she's allowing it to happen.
Well, Soros is funding a good bit of it, and the story is she's now talking about running again in 2020.
She's crazy.
Now, the only people, you know, the thought of Hillary Clinton being president was scary enough for me, but the people that are really upset about that are the young Democrats in the Democratic Party. I mean, think about that. If you're a guy in the Democratic Party or a woman who's sort of a future star, you're sitting there looking at Hillary going, I got to let this old hack run another time? That's 4 more years I got to sit back and wait?
And she's lost twice already.
Pretty much.
I mean, she has. She's lost the election twice for president.
Well, she very selfish people, very self-absorbed people. It's all about, you know, her. And that's basically what you've got going on. You've got a really selfish person who is only thinking of herself.
She ought to just go start baking cookies for her grandkids and move on.
Well, the funny thing is, Jill Stein, the funny thing about her doing that, first off, she's raised more money, double the amount of money she raised for an entire campaign for this recall effort. So, and in the original pleadings that she sent out, she said she needed $2 million. Well, they hit that $2 million the first day. And so then she said, well, now that we look at it, we need $5 to $7 million. Well, they're almost to the $7 million at this point, but in that second pleading, she actually puts in there, now we're not sure that a recount will ever actually happen, but if not, we'll use the money for election integrity efforts. In other words, we're raising all this money. We may not actually do anything with it, but thank you very much for the money.
I heard some of her integrity, I can't say the word, efforts that she was wanting to do, and that was to get rid of picture IDs and do all these type of things that are totally opposite of what needs to happen.
Well, she's raised $6.5 million already, and she only raised $3.5 million for her entire campaign.
John, what do you think it really is? There's a lack of the real hard left wing to just give up right now.
Well, what's funny is you had magazine articles already ready to go about how horrible the Trump people were for not accepting the outcome of the election. You've got Hillary, who actually is on record before the election stating that Donald Trump is the first candidate to ever suggest that he wouldn't accept the outcome of the election, and now you've got her basically not accepting the outcome of the election.
I mean, Hillary was all over that. They've got her in about 4 speeches talking about Trump making that comment, and then how un-American it was, and all these other comments she made, and then here she is allowing it to happen.
Well, guess what? One of the state, now see, there's a couple of things going on too, though. You've got the media are showing their bias again because, for example, Jill Stein's people come out and they announce that they're going to go for these recalls. In their actual announcement, they say there is no evidence of any computer hacking. Now, computer hacking is what they said they're looking for. Mm-hmm. But they admit that they have absolutely no evidence of any computer hacking. Well, the press, they don't say that. They don't say this is unfounded. They don't say this is a threat to our democracy. They say, oh, Jill Stein wants a recount. Well, then Trump tweets out, hey, you got millions of people that voted illegally. Now, I will tell you, there weren't millions of people that voted illegal, and I wish he hadn't put millions in there. But there was a lot of people that did vote illegally. We know that. You can prove that. Well, what does the press say about him? Completely unfounded statement. Damaging to democracy. You're like, well, why isn't Jill Stein a completely unfounded statement that's damaging to democracy? Here's your best one. Jill Stein says that we have to do this because of the possibility of computer hacking. One of the states involved uses paper ballots. They don't use computers.
I was watching her on the show talk, and she was talking about some state and talking about that. And the lady says, well, Ms. Stein said, you have to be hooked to the internet to be able to have hacking. And she said, those computers are not even connected to the internet. And, I mean, she didn't even know what she's talking about.
Yeah, but the worst is there's one state that doesn't even use computers.
Yeah.
You didn't even have the argument that the computers aren't hooked to the internet. They don't use computers. It's a paper ballot state.
They have to physically count every
right.
one of them. I don't know. It's just a joke. It's time to move on, folks. I mean, I wish this election was already over. I think there ought to be one heck of a party on January the 20th. That's a Friday.
Well, here's a really interesting
thing. I think we ought to have a parade.
Here's an interesting thing for the Hillary people. Now, the Hillary people have jumped on board with Jill Stein. So Jill Stein in, Michigan, if 1/15 of the people who voted for Jill Stein in Michigan had voted for Hillary, she would have won Michigan. If 1/4 of the people in Wisconsin had voted for Hillary instead of Jill Stein, Hillary would have won Wisconsin. So Jill Stein is the spoiler that cost Hillary those 2 states, and now Hillary's dumb enough to join in and go, yay, let's recount what you spoiled for me in the first place.
I mean, even the hard left claim there's really no way that this is going to do anything to turn the election.
Well, some decent Democrats are not happy about this because it dredges it up, not going to produce anything. It costs a lot of money, and they see that, although George Soros is funding some of this crap.
Why is Soros opposed to?
Because he's a socialist. Here's a man who gave an interview. Now, he's Jewish. And he hooked up in Hungary, where he's from. He hooked up with a protector when he was a young boy. But the protector was stealing Jewish people's possessions as they were being herded off to the concentration camps. And Soros participated in that and got rich off of that. And he was in an interview and was asked if he felt bad about it. And he said, no, I don't feel bad. If I hadn't done it, someone else would have. So here's a man who preyed on his own people and doesn't to this day feel bad about it. And he's probably the leading funder of the progressive movement in the country.
Well, I know he's a large participant with the Democrats.
Well, he funds the Black Lives Matter. He funds a lot of the radical environmental groups. He funds most of the progressive think tanks. He's their number one money source. And his money has been made off of actually collapsing economies and the misery of other people all through Europe.
On behalf of Franklin, what are your sources, John? I mean, where do you get this stuff?
It's called the news and history.
Now, John!
Every week.
I'm going to go back to some local news here. The Bradley County Commission's Education Committee left with a bit of a sinking feeling after seeing Bradley Central High School on Monday night. Large cracks in classroom walls, sinking floors were visible.
Let me ask a question. Why can't we build a building that lasts more than 30 years or 40 years?
I don't know. Look at Arnold School.
Arnold, 1924 or something?
I don't know. That third thing, I mean, nothing will move that school. But I'm like you, John. As much money is being spent on these schools, it's amazing to me that, it's just like the Cleveland High School gymnasium. I mean, that thing was built. I watched them build it. And I'm still kicking here and breathing, and they've had to tear it down and replace it. Right. It wasn't built correctly.
And they'll do it again in about 40 years.
The problem, I think a lot of the problem, a lot of times, is you're never as tight with other people's money as you are with your own.
Let me ask you something. Could some of these problems be caused from low bids?
Well, the biggest problem is probably the oversight of the construction project, because those cracks in the wall, that's probably because you had insufficient packing of the site. You didn't sheepsfoot it well enough, you didn't pack it well enough, and over the years it's begun to settle and sink out from under it, and it sinks, the slab drops, it causes cracks in the walls.
Mm-hmm. I know a lot of times problems happen because you take the low bid, and the low bid, they find a way to cut here and there, and it could be with some of the construction aspects.
Well, I'm usually for a low bid, but a low bid you have to make sure the low bid is low because the guy cut his margin as tight as he could, and not because he actually cut the quality of the work that's going to be done.
Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, a lot of times it's the quality of the work.
Well, but again, that goes back to what I was saying earlier. I think if you were building a house, I think you're out there and you're counting every brick. If you're building a school and it's someone else's money, it's a lot easier to kind of go, well, I'm sure they're doing fine, and you don't watch it as close.
Well, John, I think that's something that we can agree on.
Thank you.
Anyway,
Mini Franklin.
It sounds to me like it's going to be a major nightmare over at Bradley High School.
It's a bad crack. The picture that was in the banner.
I know. I mean, when you see a crack like that from a picture in the banner, it's a bad crack. It acts like it came up all of a sudden too. That it was a small crack that went bad quickly.
Well, that can be a lot of it too with the dry weather. It causes everything to dry up under the slab.
Have you been keeping up with anything on the 16 action steps for downtown?
I have not.
Okay.
But I'm sure I have an opinion on it anyway.
Well, go ahead and let's hear it.
You'll have to read me
As
the 16
usual.
steps. I'm sure I have an opinion.
Well, let me ask you something. The Summit building down there, that seems to be something that's falling in to the interest of Cleveland, and to the point that they're going to put some tax dollars out to do a study on the building and some of these type of things.
Well, I mean, my problem with that would be I wouldn't want to waste any money on a study unless I thought I could actually purchase the building.
Right.
I mean, if it'd be like me paying money to do a study on how nice it would be to own a Rolls Royce. I'm not going to ever buy a Rolls Royce, so why would I waste money studying how nice it would be to own one? I don't right offhand know who owns the building. I know that it's been used through some of the government grant money for underprivileged housing.
Right.
I don't know if anybody would turn loose of it, because from what I understand, that's a fairly lucrative scenario to get in, and that's one of the reasons you see a lot of these buildings in a lot of cities that are in disrepair, because there's no real reason to spend any money to fix it, because you've got a guaranteed rent. You know, why am I going to spend money? You know, it's the same problem we had with the building over there when the hospital made that lease to where they guaranteed the rent, whether the building was rented or not. Well, the building wasn't even finished. Well, if you've got a guarantee lease on a building, why would you spend money finishing it and renting it when you're going to get paid anyway? So my first question would be, do you have any feasible path to owning this building, or to anyone else owning it?
Well, let's say that there has been someone committed to sell the building.
Okay.
I think the building's in such bad repair that they're probably ready to get rid of it, but I don't know that for a fact. I went in the building when Ella was alive, and we went up there, and some of us volunteered to help move her, and I could not believe how bad that building was. I mean, and how small those rooms were.
Well, it was a hotel.
Oh, I know.
So they're hotel rooms.
Well, they were very small hotel rooms. I mean, they were very small hotel rooms. And, you know, the elevator system and some of the things.
Well, the elevator's ugly on the side of the building, but some of that's code. They have to have the elevator, and they didn't. It could be a very beautiful building.
The stairwell, you know,
the problem is, what's feasible to do with it? You're not going to have a hotel down there, because we don't have the draw for traffic for any hotel.
But I don't know. They say Lee University's a draw for a hotel.
You know, I don't know, and so that may be. But again, I think Daniel's probably right there too. You've got to look at it. Is it a draw 3 times a year, or is it a consistent draw?
Right.
As far as there's been a lot of talk over the years about people putting condos in there, the problem is we've had a hard time drawing people to want to live downtown. There's a lot of beautiful buildings downtown that could be made into really nice loft apartments. I think Nick Lilios has actually done a pretty good job of doing some of those buildings like that.
The problem now with the buildings downtown is the codes. They've changed, and now it's not. You can't do it. I mean,
well, that's one of the problems with government.
I know.
You know, government comes in and they don't have to meet a bottom line, so they go, we think you ought to do this. Well, maybe it's not feasible to do that.
Well, you know, part of the plan for redoing downtown is looking at some tax incentives and some things like that. It'd be similar to what Chattanooga. I'd recommend the group from Cleveland, if they put a group together study this, get with the group in Chattanooga that's done all the redevelopment down there. That's
the
amazing.
South side probably would be a good one. But again, the problem with that is that's all sort of a genesis that's followed a pretty long path. You got the riverfront done, you got the aquarium, you started drawing more people in. That allowed you to get the Tivoli a little reinvigorated. So I don't know what we've got up there right now.
We got a tunnel.
You mean the old tunnel that everybody says is there?
Well, that seems to be the big hot spot now. They're wanting to know all about the tunnel.
You mean the Civil War tunnel?
Yeah.
Have you seen the Civil War tunnel?
I saw a picture of it in the banner.
I've heard about the Civil War tunnel. I've never really seen it.
I've heard it goes under the railroad tracks and comes out over there to the house.
And how many times would you need to see that to be satisfied?
Satisfied of what?
Having seen it.
I don't know if that's going to be a part of a tourist deal from downtown Cleveland.
I'm not sure that's a huge
draw.
Come see the tunnel. It's dark. It's long. It comes out over there.
Well, we could. Hey, Halloween.
Well, again, once a year, it might be a draw.
We could make it a spook tunnel.
And then after they come and visit the tunnel, they can stay at the hotel.
That's right.
That's right.
And so for that week, we'll be filled up.
Hey, Bristol survives on their racetrack.
Yeah, but if you look, a ton of those people, they park all those cars in their yard. They don't actually go pave and put a new paved parking lot down. They park in those fields.
Yeah.
So there's a very low investment in that.
What do you think about, well, let's, before I get into that, let's talk about Fidel Castro.
Sure.
You think he's a wonderful person?
Well, you'd think that according to some of our progressive leaders, like our president. And like the worst one's Justin Trudeau in Canada. His eulogy was just horrible.
What did our president say about him? I didn't even catch that.
Well, the president said at this time of Fidel Castro's passing, we extend a hand of friendship to the Cuban people. We know that this moment fills Cubans in Cuba and in the United States with powerful emotions, recalling the countless ways in which Fidel Castro altered the course of individual lives, families, and of the Cuban nation.
He altered them all.
Yeah, now, generally, when you line all the male members of a family up against a wall and you shoot them and throw them in a hole in the ground in a mass grave, it does tend to alter families. So that's a real understatement on the president's part. And then he offered condolences to Fidel Castro's family. The average family in Cuba, as I remember it, earns something like $20 a month, isn't it?
Yeah.
$20 a month. Castro's family is worth over $900 million. Now, this is a guy who had nothing when he came, and by the way, was going to just liberate the country and then turn it back over to the people, and now his family's worth almost $1 billion, while the average family makes $20 a month. And we're going to talk about offering condolences to his family.
You don't think he made the money off cigars?
No, I don't think he made the money off cigars. Jesse Jackson said that he was fighting for freedom and liberation and that he changed the world.
Wow.
And Democrat Congresswoman Barbara Lee, he led a revolution in Cuba that led social improvements for his people. Now, just for a little background.
Didn't they have an economy before he came to rule?
They were actually, get this, they were the highest immigration level country in the world. More people were immigrating to Cuba than even the United States during our Ellis Island days. So they were the highest destination country in the world. They're now one of the worst countries in the world for people. Over 500,000 people have died trying to swim from Cuba to Florida. He murdered more people, more of his people, during the first 3 years he was in power than Hitler murdered Germans during his first 6 years in power. He's got people that have been in prison 3 times longer than Alexander Solzhenitsyn stayed in the Soviet gulags under Stalin. As early as January in 1959, he and Che Guevara, who some of our dummies are running around with his picture on their T-shirt, they were filming their murders for the mass media shock value. So in 1959, they were filming executions to show people. They have the highest suicide rate in the Western Hemisphere in Cuba. Over 20 times as many people have died trying to escape Cuba as the people who died trying to escape East Germany.
You know, let me ask you, John, how Cuba, I remember talking to Mr. Clark Stamper when he was alive. And I remember talking to Warren Kaiser when he was alive. They both had been to Cuba on a vacation one time. And they talked about it being probably one of the prettiest places they've ever been.
Dad had been.
It
was the #1 vacation destination. Beautiful country, beautiful people, wonderful economy. That's what's really funny. The social progressives will talk about, well, he liberated them from Batista, a dictator.
Right.
Well, if he was so... Now, don't get me wrong, he was a dictator.
Right.
But nobody was trying to swim to Florida when he was there. Matter of fact, they could leave, and they weren't leaving. It was the highest destination immigration country in the world. And then Cuba is liberated, according to the progressives, by Castro, and it's a hellhole. And like they'll talk about health care for all. Well, you have health care if you're in the elite ruling class or if you're a American tourist over there. But for example, this is really interesting. AIDS. They were the most successful country in dealing with the AIDS crisis in the 80s and 90s. Now, that's actually true. They were. And you still have progressives talk about what a wonderful healthcare system. So you can make that statement and say, see how good their healthcare system is? You know how they dealt with AIDS? They rounded them all up and put them in prison. They imprisoned everybody with AIDS. So any homosexual that had AIDS, any IV drug user that had AIDS, they locked you up in jail. Now, they did successfully control the AIDS epidemic on the island, but I think most of those people would not really think that that was the way to do it.
All right.
The eulogy from Trudeau up in Canada was one of the worst ones because he said, while a controversial figure, both Mr. Castro's supporters and detractors recognized his tremendous dedication and love for the Cuban people who had a deep and lasting affection for El Comandante. Now, he goes on to talk about he's a remarkable leader. Well, that has spawned on Twitter it's under the hashtag, y'all can look it up, it's under the hashtag of Trudeau eulogies. So here's some of the Trudeau eulogies that are coming out. While a controversial figure, John Wilkes Booth will be remembered as a lover of the theater. With his innovative urban renewal program, Pol Pot bravely confronted the pressing challenge of overpopulation. At a time when no scientist had considered feeding a human being through a wood chipper, Saddam Hussein filled the void. We mourn Freddy Krueger, who made dreams into reality, whose moral compass was guided by his love for the younger generation. So you can go online and look those up. Jeffrey Dahmer is a controversial figure, but he showed us the most important thing in life is to serve man.
What do you think now that Fidel is dead? Do you think that Cuba will loosen up?
No, it's still under a military dictatorship. All of this now look.
His brother's going to take over.
Yeah, but even then, there's a military establishment that actually runs the country. His brother's not so much in charge anymore. But we probably shouldn't stop the engagement that we've already started. Nobody really knows how many companies have already started planning. The problem is none of that money's getting into the Cuban people's hands. Right. It goes into the military's hands. So they're still under an oppressive regime. Now, maybe the heir of the Castro regime will kind of finally die out, and there might be some opening for some freedom. But right now, they're still under a military
Surely
regime. Someone
in that country that has enough pull would like to see. The country is such a beautiful country, it could be turned around if they would let it, I think.
Well, the problem is they execute people pretty regularly.
Well, they're going to have to stop that.
They executed Rigoberto Hernandez was a 17-year-old boy. He had been a janitor in a Havana high school, and he was mentally retarded. And they accused him of being a CIA agent planting bombs. His mother finally convinced them that he wasn't, but they executed him anyway. They executed a woman, accused her of feeding and hiding bandits, and they executed her even though she was 6 months pregnant. And these people, there's actually a large cemetery down in Miami where people regularly go and wail and cry at the graves, but there's no one buried there. These people are all buried in mass graves in Cuba. So in Miami, they actually made basically an honorary graveyard for the victims of Cuba, Castro.
All right, we're going to take a small break, and we'll be right back. Plenty more to talk about.
You're listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson. We'll be right back after this.
Hello, I'm Johnny Cash.
And you're listening to WOOPLP, Cleveland, Tennessee. WOOP FM is a broadcasting service of the Traditional Music Resource Center, and we play America's original music.
Yeah, I don't know what kind of organization y'all are running down there since, well, but he was supposed to
The cash you need today is waiting for you at Check Into Cash. It's your money, so come in and get it.
Get a payday advance today for up to $425. At Check Into Cash, we make it quick, easy, and confidential.
The cash you need is right here, so stop worrying and stop in to Check Into Cash today.
Borrowers often use payday advances over a period of months, which can be expensive. Restrictions apply. See store for details.
Did you know that U.S. Money Shops cashes all checks, even the ones most check cashers reject? Tax refund checks, government checks, payroll checks, and many more. And when you cash a check with U.S. Money Shops, we'll give you 10% off your next purchase. At U.S. Money Shops, we have everything you need at a fraction of regular retail. So stop by one of our 11 locations or visit us online at usmoneyshops.com.
Buy or sell or buy today, the better way at U.S. Money Shops.
Some restrictions may apply. See store for details.
It's Fro Daddy, saying tune in to the Fro Daddy Show Monday through Friday, 3 to 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Local news, national blues, and a lot of stuff you just can't use. In Cleveland, Tennessee at 99.9 FM and around the world in a daze at WOOPFM.com. I might even play your requests, so call me. And if you see WOOP on your caller ID, you better answer the phone, because I won't leave you alone. Fro Daddy. Dr. Christopher Chase, with Associates in Plastic Surgery, now offers his patients the convenience of a Cleveland office at 2350 North Ocoee Street. Dr. Chase specializes for the ladies in breast augmentation, including lifts, reconstructions, and reductions. Also tummy tucks or mommy makeovers, and facial rejuvenation, including facelifts, eyelids, brows, nose, and he also offers Botox procedures. Check out Dr. Christopher Chase. He is certified by the American Board of Surgery, the American Board of Plastic Surgery. He's a member of the American Society of Plastic Surgeons and the American Society of Aesthetic Plastic Surgery. Check their website out at aprs.md. That's aprs.md. Call for your convenient appointment in Cleveland at 624-0021. 624-0021. 2350 North Ocoee. That's Dr. Christopher Chase.
At Buy Here, Pay Here USA, we pay the most because we buy the best. And we make selling your car to us as easy as 1, 2, 3. 1, bring your car, truck, or SUV to one of our stores. 2, we'll give you a free appraisal with no obligation. 3, sell us your car. It's that easy. At Buy Here, Pay Here USA, we buy the best. We sell the best and we pay the most. Visit us in Cleveland, Dayton, or Chattanooga, or go to buyheresellhere.com. That's buyheresellhere.com. Restrictions apply. See store for details.
Train engineers put our heating and cooling products for almost every test imaginable. So while you're sending your kids to school, they're sending 10,000 volts through a compressor. Testing like this is the reason Train is so reliable. And why our engineers prefer their steaks. Well done.
Ready to indulge in Train comfort? Call the Train Comfort Specialist at Mechanical Systems, 336-5739. High-quality service and installation for more than 30 years.
It's hard to stop a train. Really hard.
No dealers allowed.
Jackson Catnapper, family owned and operated in Cleveland since 1933, offering the best with over 70 styles of recliners, sofas, electronic lift chairs, full living room packages. Call Mike now at 961-7239 because Jackson Catnapper now offers sales to the public
every Saturday. That's right, every Saturday.
From 8 in the morning to 1 in the afternoon. Or call Mike at 961-7239. Or go see him
every Saturday
at 1911 King Edward Avenue, just across from the main plant. Jackson Catnapper, family owned and operated in Cleveland since 1933. 961-7239.
No dealers allowed.
You're listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson on Whoop FM. Call 423-614-5553 to join in on the conversation. Now, back to Backfire.
All right, back to Backfire. Here we are. Let's talk about Trump a little bit.
Yep.
What do you think the conflicts of him being in business are going to be as being president? In other words, he owns all these businesses all over the world. He's says he's going to turn it over to his family, and then he's going to become president. The liberals going crazy, saying it's going to be a conflict of interest. He's got to do something different. Sell everything, whatever.
I don't think he ought to have to sell everything. Look, the founders all had businesses.
Right.
They all had businesses that they did, ran. It's been a long time since we had a businessman come into office, but I don't think I think the founders envisioned anyone in America becoming president.
I think it's wonderful that we've got someone who's not a life-blooded politician.
I agree.
Who took enough interest to get involved in it. And I think running a business or owning a business shouldn't be a conflict of interest. I think if it's done correctly, it'll be made public, unlike, what Hillary did. Setting up this foundation and going around the world and
the other thing is Hillary had no product to sell outside of her influence.
That's right.
In Trump's case, a hotel's a hotel.
A motel's
and look, if
a golf course is a golf course.
If the Saudi government or the British government or whatever government says, hey, I believe we'll stay in the Trump hotel just, for good measure.
Right.
I have no problem with that at all. I just think, if he owned a defense industry business where he's selling arms, weaponry, and all to the government, there'd probably have to be a little bit more. But he's in real estate, he's in hotels, he's in some basically service-type industries. I just think they're looking for anything they can look for to chew on.
I mean, now he owns a hotel right next to the White House.
So what?
Where do you think people are going to stay when they come to Washington?
They probably were going to stay there anyway.
That's right.
And I don't care.
That's right.
I really don't care.
I just don't see that type. I don't see how any business that he owns could be a conflict of interest.
Well, first off, what are you going to do? You put it in a blind trust. He knows that he owns that hotel.
Yeah.
And
he's going to talk to us.
Know that he knows that he owns that hotel or that his kids own that hotel. But I don't see this concept of, and it ties into the inheritance tax. Liberals and progressives don't value private property the way conservatives do, and they don't value all of the hard work that business people put in to build a business. And so they look at these things, well, he should just get rid of it. Well, no, he shouldn't. Because he built that, and it's his, and it should go to his family.
Some of that property, if you just want to get rid of it, I mean, it's not something. It's not $100,000 piece of property, so it'll create a fire sale if he has to start pushing to get rid of something.
Well, do you think it was easier for Obama to get a publisher for a manuscript after he was president or before he was president?
When did just a question, when did presidents stop leaving office and going back to work and just become paid speech givers?
Well, we haven't had a businessman that came like this into office in long time.
Oh, I'm telling you. When's the last time?
I'm not sure. There's a lot of talk
I
about...
can't believe you don't know, Jim.
Well, one of the reasons I don't know is it's not significant to me. He got elected. He's the president. What's interesting about that is, and you can kind of see where the Democrats would come from, he got elected, the majority of the people voted for him because he wasn't in the government. He wasn't in politics because he was a businessman. Well, that's the very thing that the Democrats are now saying, oh, that's a horrible thing. No, actually, most people voted for him because of that.
That's exactly right. And that's what I said all along. Everybody's tired of these traditional politicians that make all these promises, go into office, and go right back to doing what they do best, nothing.
Look, I am a lot more offended by someone, to be honest, like Obama, who had little of nothing before he got elected to office and is now a multimillionaire, or the Clintons, now multimillionaires, than I am someone who made it on his own before he got to office.
How do you get rich in politics?
By influence, by trading influence.
That's right.
Even if you're not actually trading influence, just the hope that they can buy some influence.
So what do you think Trump's going to have to do? Because this is going to get revved up even more by the liberals about conflicts of interest with his businesses and so forth. Is there anything that can be done to silence that?
Probably not.
Probably not.
I mean, they're going to say what they're going to say, but I mean, for example, the hotel. What, are you going to go in and question every person that stays in the hotel and say, well, why'd you stay?
They even used it. during the campaign where he would travel and stay in his own hotels, and of course his campaign money, people, when they started giving money to it, was paying for the hotels. They were making something out of that. I mean, it's amazing.
Well, let me give you this.
Where do you expect him to stay?
Well, this is sort of the mindset, though. In dentistry, we give shots, and you give shots with a needle, and a needle's sharp. And every now and then, and I've been lucky, I've not, in 28 years, I've not stuck myself. But sooner or later, you're going to stick yourself. Right. Some of your employees, you have to be very careful handling those. So OSHA comes along, and they say, have you investigated whether there's an alternative delivery method? Well, there's no alternative delivery method. It's a needle. But they will fine you unless you document, I went to the convention and I looked for an alternative method. Now, there is no alternative method. And they'll admit, well, yeah, there's no alternative, but you have to document that you looked for an alternative.
That's the kind of crap that's got to stop.
So that's what we're doing here. People go to the hotel, and they go to the hotel anyway, but what are you going to do? You're going to go interview everyone and said, well, did you consider going to another hotel? Why'd you go to this hotel? Well, because it's right across from the White House, and it's a nice hotel. You know, it's just foolishness that big government bureaucracy type people don't bat an eye at. They don't think about how difficult something is. They only think about, well, we just don't like this, so we're going to pitch a fit about it. And you know, I would suggest that they hire people on their own, not the government, but these progressives, and they should just stand out in the lobby of all of his hotels, and they should do surveys on everybody coming and going as to whether they considered going to any other hotel. And then we'll have some data to talk about.
Ohio State University student attacking.
The shooting?
Yeah. No, the shooting.
The shooting?
I love that one. Who was it?
The mom. Well, actually, it was a bunch of people. Tim Kaine.
Tim Kaine
could have been the vice president.
Our vice president almost.
He tweeted out how terrible these we need more gun control because of this shooting on Ohio State. And Shannon Watts of Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America, she immediately tweeted a picture of a barricaded door and said, for school shooting victims, it's not too soon to discuss our nation's lax gun laws. It's too late. Ohio State. Well, guess what, Shannon? It was a car and a knife that the guy used, and it was a gun-free zone, and it was an off-duty police officer with a gun who put a stop to it.
Well, do you know why the guy didn't have a gun?
Because the gun control laws.
Gun-free zones work.
Oh, is that it? Well, here's another question then.
I love it.
You're going to be the answer man today, Daniel. Why the hell's he in the country? Why is this guy in our country?
John, listen. My microphone.
What got me about this guy is that he had his mom and daddy's car. He didn't even have his own car.
Well, I tell you what's really bad about this is there's another story that hadn't really hit, but it dovetails into this. Obama apparently has made a treaty where, well, I'm going to call it a treaty. He didn't call it a treaty. It's like the Iran deal, because if he'd called it a treaty, it would have had to gone through Congress. But he has made a secret agreement to take refugees in from all of these war-torn regions, Muslim refugees. A lot of them are coming from rogue nations that are labeled terrorist states. These are people, now get this, Australia refused to allow them into their country. But we took them into our country, and he has now classified the program so you can't get information on how many he brought in, who they are, or where they went in the country. Now think about that for a minute. If you're bringing refugees in, why would you need to classify that data so nobody can see who they are and where they came from? But he's done that. And that dovetails with this guy. This guy has been here 2 years. And the worst of it is, on his Facebook page, he's talking about how these Muslims are being abused in some other country. I'm sorry, I don't think anybody on the Ohio State campus had anything to do with what some other foreign nation was doing to the Muslims in that country.
That's right. I want to ask you this. I'm going back to this vote again, where they're calling for the recount.
Yep.
Okay? Hillary could speak up right now and put a stop to this?
She could, but she's too egotistical and selfish to do it.
That's right. So therefore, I think that Mr. Trump, when he gets into office, her get out of jail free card should be taken away from her.
Well, I think the law is the law, and the Justice Department. The bad thing about what Mr. Trump said about not going to pursue it is he shouldn't have anything to do with whether they pursue it or not pursue it.
I agree.
The law is the law. Justice is justice, and if there's something there, it ought to be pursued.
People want it to be pursued.
Now,
that was part of the campaign. I think she's as crooked as he talked about her being. Therefore, if there's an investigation, it needs to be followed out. Let's let it happen. Let him go on and run for president and let the people he puts in charge of it.
Now, I will say this. I don't think Petraeus is a good choice, not because I have anything against his ability, but I don't think you can talk about how bad Hillary was and the risk she was because she endangered national security secrets through her email thing, and then turn around and put someone in who was actually admitted and convicted of turning national secrets over.
Well,
so I think that's a bad choice.
And now, John, we can agree about that also.
Probably so.
Well,
although I like Petraeus.
I like Petraeus too, and I think he was kind of done.
Although he also has come out and supported gun control, Petraeus is sort of a mixed bag.
Mm-hmm. What do you think about? What do you think about the Romney? What's going on with Mitt Romney?
I think that actually speaks. Well, I don't know. I'll back up a little bit. It's hard to know because if Trump is sincerely considering Romney, I think it speaks well about Trump and his ability to kind of put things aside and move ahead with what he thinks is in the best interest of his administration or the country. If he's drumming this up just so he can plunge the knife into Romney's back that much harder, I think it's petty and kind of a waste of time.
I don't think that, but I don't think he's going to give him Secretary of State. I think there's another position.
Well, a lot of people think he'd be really good for VA Secretary.
I think probably that would be a good pick for him.
Now, the one I want for Secretary of State, he still gets mentioned, but I want John Bolton. I think he's been the harshest critic of the Obama foreign policy. He's probably the sharpest guy in the world about world politics and how this all works. He's a little more hawkish on some issues than Trump probably is, and that may be a reason he's not going to get it. But I'd love to see him as Secretary of State.
What do you think about Tom Price?
I like Price. I think Corker would do a good job. Corker met with him yesterday. I think Corker would do an excellent job.
Tom Price is the HHS secretary. Is that what he's?
Tom is probably the sharpest person. Now the left is going crazy about him. And see that's another thing frustrating about the media. Last night I flipped through several channels and all it said was Obamacare critic, extreme Obamacare critic nominated to be Health and Human Services. Now think about that for a minute, folks. Health and Human Services. And they decide to label Tom Price as an extreme Obamacare critic, which he is. What they didn't label him as is an orthopedic surgeon, a medical doctor. Well, Health and Human Services? And you don't think that a medical doctor is a good qualification for that? So much so you don't even label him as a medical doctor?
Ben Carson, has he been named anything yet?
No. He said no for a while. Health and Human Services was actually one of the ones they had thought about.
Yeah.
For him, I think Price is much better. Price is probably the leading guy with an alternative to Obamacare. He's had it in place. It's similar to the proposal Paul Ryan put forward, and then he took over as the Budget Committee chairman after Paul Ryan took over the speakership. So he is completely in tune with what our budget situation is. He is a deficit hawk. He understands that we are spending way too much money and we've got to get the deficit down. I don't think he could have made a better choice than Price for Health and Human Services.
What do you think Bob Corker's being interviewed for?
For Secretary of State. He's Foreign Relations Committee chairman. And look, the thing about someone like Senator Corker, I think he could do anything. I mean, I think you could appoint him to anything, and he'd do a great job because he's sharp as a tack. He commits to things, and he puts the time in to study them. So I wouldn't have a problem with Senator Corker being anything. But from what I understand, it's Secretary of State that they're talking to him about.
What about Rudy? Where's he going to end up?
You know, I'm not as big a fan of Rudy. I like Rudy Giuliani as far as a person. I like some of his politics. I would have much rather seen him at the Justice Department, although I think Sessions will be great too. But I'm not seeing him as a foreign policy guy. Now, they claim that he's got a security company and he's worked for years with a lot of these different countries and all. That doesn't necessarily mean that he understands geopolitics.
Rudy? How old is Rudy?
He's up in his late 60s, I would think.
He looks like, I mean, I don't know. I'm just hoping he's in good health.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to get it. They say there's a lot of problems with some of his business relations.
Well, I'd say he could get anything he wants from Trump. I mean, he was such a loyal supporter.
Oh, I agree.
And so everybody thinks that if anyone's thinking that Trump's going to bow over Rudy, I don't think that's the case. I think basically Trump will do anything Rudy wants done. Mitt Romney, I just can't figure. I have no faith in Mitt Romney. I'll tell you something, John. I was a high supporter of Mitt Romney when he ran.
Right.
But when he did what he did, he lost me, and I mean in a big way.
You know, I wasn't as sold on Trump during the primary system, but even I felt like Romney was over the top and probably not helping the party. You know, I was concerned, and I'll be honest, I didn't think Trump was going to be able to win. And so I was concerned about us being able to hold the Senate, hold the House.
I made you keep your head high, though, didn't I?
Well, I mean, he did what he said he was going to do. But my point was, even from the standpoint of someone who didn't feel like we had as good a shot at the presidency, I felt like what Romney was doing was depressing the Republican vote in general and was going to hurt us down ballot. So I didn't like it for that reason. But having said that, he was one of the first ones to call him and said, hey, congratulations, which is sort of obviously I was wrong.
I mean, but you can't come out and do what he did.
Well, Kellyanne Conway called Trump all kinds of names.
I know.
She was
her.
Cruz's. No. She called Trump all kinds of names. She was Cruz's person before she came to Trump's campaign. Yeah. And she had attacked him and called him all kinds of names, too. He turned around, he hired her. She went to work for him. She, by all reports, did an excellent job in shepherding through the last couple of months of the campaign.
I think when it comes down to it, Trump will give Romney something, but I don't think it'll be the Secretary of State position.
Well, it may not.
And somebody asked, it came up in a conversation the other day with me, the only reason that Trump is even talking to Mitt Romney right now is to make sure he's out of the way for the next election.
Oh, I don't know about that. Yeah. I'm not. Two things. I'm not sure Trump's worried about the next election, particularly. If I were him, I probably wouldn't be. I'd be more worried about doing a good job.
I think that's what
and then I don't have to worry about the next election.
I think he'll do a good job, and I think that's all he's worried about. First female president?
I don't know.
I think it'd be his daughter, Trump's daughter.
Oh,
who knows?
I'm not big on dynasties.
I'm not big on dynasties, but I think that America is wanting a female president for some reason, and that's okay. I don't have a problem with
his daughter's more liberal than he is.
Well,
I'd have a hard time with that.
Well, John, you had a hard time with him.
Well, he's more liberal than I am.
Well, all right, I want to ask you what the future of the Republican Party is then.
I don't know. The problem is I'm a Republican because Republicans have represented conservative thought. Mm-hmm. If the Republican Party ceases to be a conservative party, I probably will find a different party.
Well, here's what I think.
Or I'll fight to pull it back.
Here it comes, Dan.
Here's what I think may happen in the future. There's going to end up being 4 parties.
Well, I think that's a disaster.
Well, I think that's the way it's going. You got the Liberal Party, so far left, and then you're going to have on the Democratic side, and then you're going to have what the Democrats consider their conservative party, which is the middle. Now then, I think the Republicans
A conservative Democrat in the Democrat Party, at least, not the voters.
That's what I'm talking about.
Is a liberal.
Well,
A conservative, an
no.
active conservative Democrat's a liberal.
I think that the Democratic Party is split right now.
The Democrat Party is basically a socialist at this point.
I think it's
and they're
split.
not even arguing over that.
Well, let me finish my thought process. I think there's going to be two parties on the Democratic side, the liberal side, and then they're going to call it the middle.
For my satisfaction, say less liberal. The socialists and the liberals. How's
they're
that?
going to call it conservative Democrats.
Well, okay.
Okay. Now then, I think on the Republican side, if we get split up like this, you're going to have the Republicans, which are the conservative group, and then you're going to have the Trump party, which will be a little more in the middle. There's a moment of silence here.
Well, I mean, the problem is he ran on a pretty hard right platform for the most part. There's a few things that he sort of split on, but he ran as pretty hard right. And so a lot of these people will be disappointed if he doesn't stick relatively close to that.
He's going to do a good job all the way around. But I want to ask one last thing. We're out of time. I want to ask you one last thing. Trump made a comment about a possibility of jailing people that burn the American flag, or having to give up their rights to be an American for a year.
Yep.
What's your opinion?
I think he's mistaken on that. I wish he'd get off Twitter a little bit. I think he tweets before he thinks all the time. Although there's sort of a counterintuitive thing to a lot of what he does. He stirs things up and then it settles back kind of into a more middle ground. But constitutionally, they have a right to burn the flag. Now, I think you have a constitutional right to not do their business, not hire them. There are a lot of repercussions to that.
The flags don't work.
Well, that's true.
How about take them off? Could we take away benefits if they
the problem for me is I still get into...
That's a good idea. Let's take their benefits away.
I get into the hypocrisy of this. Hillary Clinton in 2005 co-sponsored the Flag Protection Act, where it actually called for, a 12-month jail sentence for anyone who desecrates the American flag. So my problem here is that the liberals are, getting all up in arms about Trump, and I think he's mistaken on this. It won't happen. It wouldn't. First off, it's not constitutional. The Supreme Court's already ruled on it. But it's so hypocritical of the liberal progressives to be fussing about it when their champion, Hillary, in 2005 put forward virtually the same sentiment, the same statement.
I will say this: once Trump says he's going to do something, he follows through.
Well, the problem is
he doesn't change his mind.
Well, I think. Could we take away benefits?
You could do that.
I mean, if they're sitting there drawing benefits.
Although you'll end up with a court case, and what they'll say is that is the government punishing, and it's free speech, and they'll probably go to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court will probably say you can't do it based on that.
All right. Here's our last question of the day for John Stanberry.
Dun, dun, dun,
dun, dun, dun. Will President Obama pardon Sergeant Bergdahl?
I don't know. I think he's, when I say he, I mean Obama, I think he's despicable enough to. I'm not sure he's going to. A lot of people think that he's already died on that hill a lot because there were some things he didn't know when he brought him to the White House and all. He didn't know about the desertion, apparently. The most informed guy in the country didn't know.
How do you bring somebody to the White House and not know everything about it?
Because you make decisions based on ideology, not on facts. And so he sees this guy as a symbol, and he jumped on the symbol first before he had all the facts. You've got, for example, right now...
One thing, he sure looks foolish.
Well, you get this on the left a lot. Angela Merkel's announced she's running for re-election as Chancellor of Germany. Well, her polling numbers are sagging. Now, she was a champion of immigration. Well, guess what? She's now stated that 100,000 of the migrants are going to have to go back, and that over a third of them will have to be forcibly removed. Now, this is the champion of open, borders and open immigration. Now that she's running for re-election, and she's decided, well, maybe that's not such a good idea.
Well, do you think he's going to pardon him or not?
Bergdahl?
Yeah.
I don't think he ultimately will. I think he'd probably like to, but I don't think he will. I tell you, the worst thing is Jimmy Carter yesterday or the day before said that he should normalize relations with the PLO before he left office.
The PLO, what is it?
The Palestinian Liberation Organization.
Carter, bless his heart.
He's gone all completely off.
He really has gone off.
Hey, there was an interesting thing that happened. This is more of a cultural thing, and I always like to see these things. Nick Cannon, who was married to Mariah Carey, the host of one of those TV shows, he's now dogging on Planned Parenthood, which was really interesting. This is a quote he gave on The Breakfast Club, which is a radio show. He said, Hillary was sneaking and cheating. Think about all the stuff they did with Planned Parenthood and all that type of stuff. That type of stuff is to take our community and forget gentrification. It's real genocide, and it's been like that for years. So they follow up, a TMZ reporter pressed him on it, and he doubled down by saying, yeah, it's population control. Planned Parenthood is modern-day eugenics.
Yeah.
Now, that's finally someone in the black community seeing what the actual history of Planned Parenthood is. It was racist. It was eugenics, and it was basically, I've said this before, Margaret Sanger, the founder of Planned Parenthood, who Obama gave a Congressional Medal of Freedom to, actually said the Negro was a mongrel race that should be plucked from the garden, the human garden.
Oh, God.
That's it. She spoke to the Ku Klux Klan on 12 different occasions.
It wasn't a one-time statement.
No, and Obama brought her to the, she's dead, but Obama gave her the Congressional or White House Presidential Medal of Freedom. A raving racist.
All right, Hickson prediction. Obama will pardon Bergdorf before he leaves office.
I hope you're wrong, but
I hope I'm wrong too, because
may be right.
I'm going to tell you something. That might get my dandruff up, and I'm bald-headed.
Sheesh.
That might get my dandruff up worse than anything.
Well, here's one really scary thing about that. There was one discussion this weekend that said one of the reasons he might do it is if he pardoned him, you would lock all the information up, and you wouldn't be able to find out the truth of what happened.
And I think that's what he's going to do. He's going what he's going to do is nip it in the butt.
Before we go off, if anyone doesn't know and you've got kids, Cleveland City Schools are 2 hours late today, and Bradley County is closed, as are many of the surrounding counties.
And say a prayer for the people in Polk County, the people up in Gatlinburg, and if you want to say a little prayer for Franklin, they just had a minor little family thing to deal with. Nothing major, but we all say a prayer for all of them.
All right, folks, that's it for this week. We'll be back next week, and hopefully Franklin will be back in here with us, and we'll be talking about all the good things that come in politics, and we'll keep up with all the local news. See you next week. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson, John Stanberry, and Franklin Chansey. Catch them again on Whoop FM at noon today and every Wednesday morning from 7:30 to 8:30. Now, back to more music on Whoop FM.
A shocking new study on the damaging effects of mobile phone radiation finds